To my heart is a session that I started at my first conference that I did in 2017. We had a wonderful panel then, we have a wonderful panel now. It's kind of continued to grow, which I'm so proud of. I think it's one of the best conversations that we can have during the palms. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over now to our resident chef and past president, Jenny Wolf, who is going to introduce our wonderful panel. And if you have a hard time seeing or hearing, please feel free to move on up. We're very, it's a family environment. We're all friends here, so we can just move right on up here. And note that we're Facebook living it. Yes. I gotta get the words right. And then also we're doing this live via Zoom. So we wanted to have this content available not just for the folks that were here in person in Tallahassee able to join us in person, but it's the only session that's also going to be live streamed on our social media channels and also on Zoom, so people can watch it later. So, behave yourself. This is for the record. All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, welcome again. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your patience as we try to be flexible on all these different platforms. I have done something a little bit unusual in terms of trying to bring something from my new hometown, which is in Pensacola. So this is my husband's recipe for jambalaya, his family's recipe. And I can tell you that if you want to learn more about foodways and history of certain dishes, the first inspiration I got was listening to Dr. Dennis Davis, who's here with us today as well. But it's something I feel really fortunate to be able to take an opportunity to learn how to cook something that's outside of my normal realm. I was telling someone earlier, I'm from Iowa, I do eat potatoes, but I try to keep the secret to my husband. Anyways, again, I'm just so happy to have you all here, and those of you that are online, we appreciate you being here. The panel that we're going to have today is our underrepresented history panel, but we're really going to do a close look into not only Zora Neale Hurston's heritage and history in Florida, but specifically in Fort Pierce. This is something that a lot of us may not be aware of, how much of an importance and impact that she had in Fort Pierce, not only then when she lived there, but ongoing to this day. And the Zora Neale Hurston Florida Education Foundation is here with us today, as well as Dr. Deborah Plant. And we're going to learn more about the challenges and opportunities that their organization has really been facing in Fort Pierce in contrast or comparison to places like Eatonville, where more of Ms. Hurston is more well known and associated with. So I think it gets right to the heart of what underrepresented history means, and it's more important to me for you to all hear that directly from the speakers. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves at one point, but if you could just all stand up and wave to the back of the room. We have Ms. LaShawn Bell, who is from the Zora Neale Hurston Florida Education Foundation, as well as Mr. Alexander, Dr. Shelby. Sorry, just met you today. Thank you for coming. And then we also have Dr. Deborah Plant. And she is not with the foundation. She was the editor of Zora Neale Hurston's last book, Barracoon. And I actually heard her speak in Mobile. If y'all are familiar with the Clotilda site that's there, it's a great museum to visit, but there's so much more beyond that Dr. Plant brings to us as being a literary expert of Ms. Hurston. So we're going to go ahead and get this started, and I'll just let you all introduce yourselves one more time officially, and then I will run the computer so that we can get you all going. And once you come up to speak, will you sit in the chair for your presentation? Dr. Hobson, are you there? Dr. Hobson? Bear with me just a moment. where it's going to begin our conversation here today. I don't know if that's Ms. LaShawn. I know you were going to talk about the foundation's work because
Yes,
we are not getting Dr. Hobson coming through
Okay.
at the moment.
Who's,
I know they're having internet trouble because of the hurricane.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I know he was logged in.
Did he say that, Miss Marjorie is supposed to assist?
someone is supposed to mute her.
Dr. Hobson, are you there? Well, if we could, just move along with the folks in the room here so we can get to our question and answers, because we'd really like to have this be a conversational session. So once we learn more about the foundation, and we'll get some reflections from many that are here presenting us, and we'll get to more of a conversation with you all as well.
Okay, good afternoon. We are
afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm LaShawn Bill. I am one of the board members of the Zora Neale Hurston Florida Education Foundation. By profession, I'm an educator in St. Lucie County, which is where the city of Fort Pierce is located. As far as the foundation, we are in the process of making sure that we commemorate and preserve everything that Zora touched during her life in Fort Pierce. I know everyone knows that she resided in Edenville, but she did reside in Fort Pierce, and that is also her final resting place. We have inherited the state hospital that she died in, and we have a lot of the artifacts and things like that that were there at that time. We're in the middle of renovations to make it a full functioning building for everybody to be able to come in and tour. In March, we just had our Zora Neale Hurston Festival there, where we had different local and out-of-state authors come and present their literary works. So we try to make sure that everything that she touched in the city of Fort Pierce is just kept alive. We have the area is actually called the dust tracks because, as you know, in some parts of Florida still are not paved. Those areas in Fort Pierce, which is actually a rural area, and depending on some people, they see it as Central Florida, but it is more so South Florida. It's the very bottom of Central Florida and the very top of South Florida. So we kind of are geographically unique where we are. But Fort Pierce is a rural area known for its farming and agriculture, things of that nature. And now we're coming into this area of industry. So the city itself is growing, and we are trying to make sure that in our preservation of the history of Zora Neale Hurston, that we are able to keep up with the pace, and also to make sure that we have a presentable draw of those visiting the area to where Zora Neale Hurston lived, where she worked, one of the newspapers, that building, the school that she worked at, two of them, which is Lincoln Park Academy, one of the top magnet schools in the state of Florida, as well as Means Court. And they are all once upon a time walking distance, but if you are over 30, your knees may not allow for that. So it is definitely within driving distance, and she is buried in Fort Pierce as well. So that is all part of the tour that our foundation tries to provide to the community or anyone that is interested in knowing more about Zora Neale Hurston, where she lived and worked. We have a library that is named after her, and there is a dedicated area in that library with all of Zora's books. There are pictures, there are markers, and there's actually a map that will point out everywhere that is significant to her to be visited in Fort Pierce.
Excellent. introduction.
Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for wanting to take this opportunity. Thank you, everyone who played a role in coordinating this event, inviting us, all the individuals from our organization for attendance, and just everybody who's here. Thank you so much for creating this space for us to talk about Zora Neale Hurston's wonderful impact on youth. So I just want to say thank you. I'm currently the president of the Zora Neale Hurston Foundation. English faculty was in Footpaths for many years, but then I moved into Texas and still managing, trying to help our wonderful team to manage this amazing work that we have in Fort Pierce. And so, yeah, that's my
Thank you, Dr. Hobson. And next, would you like to introduce yourself? And
Well, I'm just a resident historian. I just make sure everything's accurate. I don't do anything much. Yeah, my name is Dr. Shelby. I actually went to FSU, and I taught here for a while, and then I moved down to Fort Pierce, and I started teaching at Indian River. I'm just a resident historian. I'm the one that makes me and Annie Fuller, my colleague, we just make sure that everything is historically, accurate, stuff like that. So, yeah.
excellent.
That's it. That's all I do.
And Dr. Plant. You can sit, yes, ma'am.
Hello, everybody.
What's that?
There you are. Hey. We can't see him here, huh?
Now, I need him to share his screen,
Okay, good.
so we'll get correct.
Okay, so good afternoon, and I'm happy that you all decided to take lunch with us. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Jenny Wolf for inviting me to participate in this conference. Like she said earlier, I met her in Alabama when I was doing another event there, and she heard something that she thought would intersect with the work of preservationism. I'm not quite sure what that was, but I was interested in where she was going with it. And what I was interested in when she started talking about underrepresented communities in relation to Zora Neale Hurston, my thought was first of all of Fort Pierce, because a lot of people don't know about Fort Pierce. A lot of people don't even know Fort Pierce exists, and those who know about Fort Pierce haven't heard about Hurston, and they haven't been there. And so I thought that we could shine some light on Fort Pierce. And so I talked with Dr. Hobson about that, because as much as I can be a cheerleader for Fort Pierce, I'm not from there. And when it comes to the work of preservationists and community activists, well, those are people I know. And Dr. Hobson is one of them. Ms. Marjorie Harrell is one of them. Apparently, also Ms. Bell and Dr. Shelby. And I've met them, but I haven't spent time with them. I've spent time with Dr. Hobson and Ms. Martin. We communicate frequently. So I know of their work, and I know what they do. And it has to, when it comes to going to meetings and talking to your representatives and the mayor and writing grants and talking door to door, and how do we save this building, and how do we get funds for this, and how do we keep them from encroaching on that. This is the work they do, and this is pioneering work. And so I asked Dr. Hobson to work with me to get others from Fort Pierce here so that they can share with you what they do, because they are the heroines who are helping to preserve the legacy of the heroine, heroes and heroines. They're helping me to preserve the work of Zora Neale Hurston and preserving that legacy for all of us. So my hat's off to Dr. Hobson and especially Miss Marjorie Harrell. She's I don't know. She's just a pioneer in every sense of the word, and she is dauntless. And whatever's going on, she's going to know about it. And if it has anything to do with that legacy of Zora Neale Hurston, she's going to have something to say about how it goes forward and how to stop anyone from trying to stop it from going forward. That's her, and my hat's off to her. For me, I come at this from a literary angle. Like I said, I'm not from there. I'm just one of their greatest fans, and I love the community. I love the people, they supported me for decades, really. And so every chance I get to speak about Fort Pierce, I do so. In terms of how I interact with or intersect with this, Hurston is well known as a literary figure. She's well known for her masterpiece, Their Eyes Are Watching God. And the other aspect of Hurston is that she was a genius social scientist. And as a social scientist, as a cultural anthropologist, as an ethnographer, as a folklorist, she has lived her entire life, all of her life force, she expended on identifying, documenting, celebrating African American folk life and folk culture. And she did this because she not only did she love African American folk culture and African American folk, because of course this is her own roots, but also because she had the endowment to do it. She had the genius to do it. She had the natural ability, and then she had the academic training skill to do it. And so when we read her, we will see in her work that also what she's doing is the work of a preservationist. She's preserving these communities. She's preserving traditions. She's preserving, cultural expressions and all of these kinds of things. So when we look at, for instance, Jonas Gordon, we're going to learn something about Monticello, Alabama. And if you haven't read that, you want to read that because that's where she was born. Many people think she was born in Eatonville, and that's not the case. She was reared there, but she was born in Monticello, Alabama. And when you read Jonas Gordon, not only will you understand something about the folk there, you will also understand something about America, because Hurston is not only documenting and preserving the history of African Americans, she's preserving the history of America with an African American inflection. And so the parents of John Hurston in Jonas Gordon, Amy and Ned Cridland, they're sharecroppers. And what we know about sharecropping is that this is one of the means in which the so-called white power establishment used to re-enslave African Americans. We're emancipated, but as far as they're concerned, their labor force had gotten away from them. They did everything they could to get it back, and that's documented in that text. When we go a little further up the road or down the road, I'm not sure which direction, but in Alabama, then we're also there in Africatown. And so she, through Barracoon, she has preserved the history of one of the only known African communities that was built, established, created, and run by and for African peoples, those who had been brought here from West Africa on the flotilla. So she has preserved that history, not only the history of Olawale Kosala, but also the history that he brought with him when he shared with her his narrative about how he was captured on the continent. That's a part of our history that we didn't have before Olawale Kosala shared his story with Zora Neale Hurston, who had the genius to have it shared with her in such a way that we have Barracoon, and therefore she has, through that means, preserved that story. Not only African American history, American history, and international history, right? Because heretofore we didn't have any story that told us what happened on that continent before we were enslaved here. And there are others stories, but in terms of what those of us in America can speak to, only Olawale Kosala and his shipmates could actually share that story. So Hurston has contributed to raising the profile of Africatown in Alabama. Now, because of its singular history, we know something about that place. But with Hurston's preserving that story, we also have an aspect of it that contributes to our knowing more about Africatown. In 2023, they created and opened the Africatown Heritage House Museum. And anybody has been there yet? It's in Africatown. It's Mobile. Yeah, and it's wherever I-10 is, you just get on I-10 and you'll be there. Well, you're not that far away from it now. We could walk. But bring some water. But yeah, so this museum that's open, the exhibits that are in that museum, all of them are centered around the words of Olawale Kosala that are taken from Barracoon, this work that Hurston preserved. So then most people know something about Eatonville, and so again we have Hurston documenting, the history of that town, a town that's known as the first all-black and all-administrated incorporated town. And we know this, we might have known it anyway, but we know it also because Hurston, she embedded that story in, not only in Their Eyes of Wachigaw, but also in Eatonville Anthology and other such works. So Hurston is indeed doing the work of a preservationist. One of the things that Ms. Wolf asked us to look at, or she asked in the email, she said that we would be looking at, was about how it is that we, that means you all, as preservationists and then others who are community advocates, how can we work better together to promote all of Florida's heritage. And one of the things I would like to suggest is that we can, for instance, with someone like Zora Neale Hurston, to collectively celebrate and do what we can to advance and promote the legacy of someone like her, and it may be someone else in some other underrepresented, marginalized community who has helped to preserve the history of that community or that city or that town. Who are these people? And to the extent that we can elevate them and we can help to have them be known, then that also helps to draw attention to that community, to that city or that place, what have you, so that the good attention that they can get, because sometimes the attention that people receive, is problematic. But when it's something that can help to support a place, then this is what we want, and this is what can happen. To do that, what I see happening in Fort Pierce is that there is this effort, this commitment to maintain all of what we know about the Dust Tracks Trail that Ms. Bell was telling us about. And they have worked so hard to maintain, to either somehow acquire buildings or purchase. For instance, they're purchasing the house that she lived in. That's in the works now. They're doing everything they can to hold on to what Zora Neale Hurston was associated with. And so, in that sense, they are not only preserving these buildings and what have you, these facilities, but they're also preserving the legacy of someone who preserved the history of those places. And so it's like, help the preservationists. When we help the people who have been the preservationists, then we help these places that we're working to preserve. And so we can elevate in those ways as well. And I keep talking about what Fort Pierce is, because Fort Pierce is a very loving community. And when you meet people like Dr. Hobson, you meet people like Ms. Marjorie Harrell and our guest here, you feel what Hurston felt when she was there. They took care of her. And that's something I want people to know, because there is this idea that, Fort Pierce is somewhere that Hurston went and was forgotten about and thrown in an unmarked grave and died penniless and all of that kind of thing. She lived in a community of people who loved her. And they loved her, they knew her. And so one of the things that attest to this, and one of the ways that, again, the preservationist is being preserved, is in the story of another Zora Neale Hurston work called Herod the Great. Now, Herod the Great is one of the last known unpublished novels of Zora Neale Hurston, and that novel is going to be published on her birthday in 2025. And one of the reasons that we have that novel is because one of her friends, Deputy Sheriff Patrick Duval, passing by her house and saw some smoke and realized that her material was being burned, and he put that fire out. And he pulled out of that fire, among other things, what was left of Herod the Great. And in that sense, in that instant, he was a preservationist. He preserved that work. So he has contributed to the legacy that we're preserving in relation to Zora Neale Hurston. And as we preserve her, then what she has helped to maintain and document and keep and celebrate for us, then we continue to have this as part of our own African American and American heritage. And so these are just some of the ideas, some of the things we can think about in terms of how we go about helping to preserve, or even to bring to awareness these underrepresented histories, these underrepresented communities, underrepresented individuals who have so much to share with us, because it's all about not only this marginalization that we want to end. We also, in terms of going forward with preservationist ideas and ideals, we have to, and this is the last thing I want to say, is to be courageous, because it's over time, there will always be some kind of pushback. There will be those who have decided, well, we've had enough of diversity and equity and inclusion, and we can never be okay with that. This is why, you know, we have these issues with underrepresentation or devalued communities, and you know, this push to try to erase history. And when we have individuals like Hurston who have helped us not only to see what our history is, but to have us understand that this is our human history, this is humanity. And that's the thing that she most really shared with us in terms of her collecting African American folklore, is that we are human beings, and not only human but also of a divine spirit as well. And as such, you know, we're part of a whole. And when we look at what that means in America, it's always the impetus to have us move more and more and more toward a perfect union. That's what we're supposed to be about as Americans anyway. And Hurston has made her contribution, and I thank you all for coming and listening to us about Fort Pierce. And there's more to say, right, Dr. Hobson?
Thank you so much, Dr. Plant, for your insights. And I think you are right. This idea of raising the profile of these places and spaces devoted to Zora Neale Hurston and to other individuals and major icons in American history And so her family gave up. And that's how Mr. Tips pulled up some child status. I called him, and then I told the secretary, because he had not come to the building on CDA. I told him what was going on, and she called him and told him. He called me and said, you mean that this is house that Zora Neale Hurston lived in? They were not coming home to buildings. You don't have to worry. You don't have to come to this meeting. It was not better. And I called Martin, called him, just sat back there, and he was giving to us, and that's how we got married. It was already a black home, but they were going to turn it over to the veterans. No way. No way. Now that's the kind of person I am. I work for the community. Right now, I'm working we work out and I work together for our team. You know, you get me one of their person house. We're getting it now. The papers are in the works. We're getting it. So that's the kind of thing that I do. I do what nobody else dares to do. But I do. And so, they gave us the house, gave us the keys, gave us the paper. Then the veterans took care of it. They really took care of it. They fed her, they got her, they took her to the house, and she ate Sunday dinner. She went to the back of the building in order to listen. And Sunday afternoon was the white. She was the only woman that could walk in the front door of the veterans' home. Everybody else had no protection, but not so much really front door. And so, that's how I can go stop because I can go on and on about Zora Neale Hurston and the community always came what we needed. We had our own stores, we had our own clothing stores, and as you see, we're full of stores. And now we're trying to stop people from selling themselves. They have lots of stuff tomorrow on the city is working on something where they will be able to get on the spot. And that's another story for another day. When they can know and that's because I was the part of this. But Zora Neale Hurston started this foundation to all stakeholders. And talk about Zora about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to get us into some question and answer, or not question and answer, we may not have the answers, but discussion session. And I don't know, if Dr. Hobson, if you want to throw out the first question to the panel, so that we can get a conversation going here with folks in the room, and we'll try to manage some online questions as well as they come in. I think if you'll just go ahead and throw something out there, maybe to Dr. Plant or Ms. Bell or Dr. Shelby. And why don't I ask two of you to come sit here so we can get. Yes. Yes.
Go ahead. I'll supplement. Start giving it. There you go.
How we are where we are right now. our area is sandwiched between extreme wealth on the shore, on Hutchins Island, extreme wealth. Just north of us, one of the, I was told, the top 5 most wealthy zip codes in the country is in the Treasury Coast. And yet you're dealing extreme abject poverty in it's extreme, almost to the point when I can't get a third world problem. Someone said, we're sandwiches. So that's what I mean by socioeconomic position. And of course, these are also racial. Like you can be part of what we are seeing, like I can be black and the surrounding areas, like I can be black and so anyone have anything to say about how that has impacted residential neighborhoods?
And I would encourage anyone here as we try to get this more interactive with the room. If you have a similar situation, you may not be familiar with Fort Pierce, but this is not, entirely unusual and unique in Florida to Fort Pierce. So if anyone would like to share their story, we also want to make sure we get to some questions from the audience that's here. So let's just kind of open up a dialogue so that we can all kind of participate. And Dr. Hobson, if you'll bear with me just a moment, we'll try to get someone here to speak, and I hope that you can hear them, and we'll go from there. Comments?
Stay slow and gotta run back, but I know Fort Pierce well. I know Fort Pierce pretty well. I don't see the challenges that very different from most of our historic California communities. I would say, well, I do know you get the grant for historic survey. I know that was should be a good work soon. And that should do you a big help in terms of the non-science neighborhood. But I'll also say I think it's a good strategy in terms of money comes from different resources. And once you have a strategy in place and plan in place and really start from an economic development perspective, which is lots of happening. Once you figure out ways that these spaces can probably generate revenue, especially on Avenue D, it's easier to attract funds to put the capital back together for conversation. I'll keep it short here. I got a lot of drama, and we can talk more.
And before you leave, if you can tell us what the survey, I think that is something that we heard from the organization, the religious organization for the environment in Palm Beach, in Washington, D.C. Can you just explain the survey that they're talking about?
Lincoln Park, Main Street, submitted an application last year based on the recommendations for preserving heritage sites in the neighborhood. This historic resources survey basically will document resources such as not only Zora Neale sites, but basically it's our neighborhood. And it's part of a first step that you want to national register destinations that you would need to have. But that designation again open the door for potential tax credits for private revenue generating properties, or make your nonprofit organizations and sites eligible for grants that you may not be eligible right now for revitalization.
She goes with the other.
get to while we're in the room and before people need to shift?
Maybe we want to open up if there's someone else who has any questions. I don't think we can be leaving time, have their questions answered. If there's anyone who has questions, you can either drop it in the chat or unmute and speak.
Any questions in the room?
Anyone has comments, questions for our panelists?
Do you guys know about the house that Zora Neale Hurston lived in St. Augustine? It's a house that is probably threatened. I think you know more about it than you probably know. As far as her history there, I mean, she definitely rented a room there, and there's a mural, a signed mural with her portrait, and that's something that we're very concerned about because that the building's in rough condition, and I would think there is some kind of connection with her past and her history in Florida. I don't know if you know about it at all.
Marvin,
Yes.
there was a speaker at the festival who was documenting all of these places in Florida where Hurston lived, resided, or whatever, and she talked about St. Augustine. Do you remember her? The name?
Yes. She's a history professor at Rollins College. So she also helps preserve that at Rollins College. Information that they have is sort of Leslie Kemp, Dr. Leslie Kemp.
Dr. Leslie Kemp has been working on that or exploring that, the house there, and I seem to remember that they were trying to do something by way of preserving that. I think that she addressed that. So you may check with her about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I see it. Right now.
Yeah. Hi, I was talking on camera, but I want to say this is absolutely wonderful. Lunch and learn right now is a hot one. I am Dr.
Yes.
Well, while we have a pause, Dr. Hobson, I want to take take a moment to thank our panelists. Several of our attendees are here for a conference and are running back to sessions. This was their lunch break, so I just want to say thank you all for attending, and thank you to our speakers. We can certainly continue this conversation. We'll keep the chat open for a few minutes and the web, so if those of you online want to stay, we'll be happy to take some other questions, but I wanted to give you all a chance to say thank you to our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And Marvin, I do have that contact information for NS Davis. But I'll make sure.
Thank you.
I'm there helping to monitor the chat. So for the folks downstairs, you just call me. But so much for people. My phone probably did that for those of us from the state. And I also wanted to remind everyone that Marvin did this for our real innovation.
that's actually what I was thinking, more along the lines of, like, she said a toolkit. Like, is there like a checklist? Like, have you done this, or do you know about it, and here's resources, that kind of thing. So that's great that that's already put together, and that's something we can definitely utilize.
I'll bring it down here.
I'll be right here. I'll be right here. And just even being here these last 2 days has been quite resourceful to see what everybody does. And you know, this T-shirt is very great talking point all by itself. So it kind of has people, a few people like, I was waiting for you to come down to the table. I wanted to talk about it. And did you know? And did you know? And I'm like, this is like summer school, because no, I didn't know. So I know now. Oh, do tell. I'm listening and paying attention.